Atlanta moved with the usual Monday energy, fast, frantic, but somehow stuck in neutral. Horns blared like impatient birds. Sidewalk conversations mixed with the thud of tired sneakers and the low hum of buses crawling through traffic. Steam curled out from coffee cups mixing with the scent of exhaust, perfume, and stress. It was rush hour, but in this city, time never really rushed. It just repeated itself, chaotic and unbothered. But Ava Monroe wasn't here to get swept up in the rhythm. She wasn't here for the noise or the small talk. She stepped out of a black hybrid sedan, heels clicking sharp against the pavement like a metronome counting down. 37 years old, clean lines, crisp confidence, dark tailored suit. Her presence didn't ask for space, it took it. She moved like someone who'd already mapped out every step of the day and didn't plan on adjusting for anyone. Ahead stood the Samuel T. Harmon Federal Courthouse, gray, cold, and too tall to ignore. The kind of place meant to intimidate. It loomed like it was built to hold secrets, not serve justice. Ava didn't flinch. She'd been in bigger rooms with colder faces. She adjusted the strap of her leather briefcase. Inside were documents that would decide the outcome of a federal investigation. Pages that people in high places didn't want to see the light of day. In her other hand, a slim manila folder. Nothing flashy. But its contents? Easily worth more than the careers of the men waiting to lie about her. 5 steps from the courthouse entrance, it happened. Hands up. The voice hit from behind. Loud. Forceful. The kind of voice that came with a badge and the assumption that it didn't need to explain itself. Ava froze. She turned slowly, her expression unreadable. Pulse steady. Eyes sharp. 2 officers. Both white. One older, mid-50s with a thick neck and a chip on his shoulder. The other younger, mid-30s, eager to impress and already scanning her like she was packing explosives. Sergeant Greg Dalton and Officer Kyle Reeves. She didn't need to see their names. She'd met their kind before. Different uniforms, same playbook. They walked like the sidewalk belonged to them. Dalton stepped closer, jaw locked, badge gleaming under the Georgia sun. His tone tried to stay calm, but his stance was already on edge. "Ma'am, step back and put the bag down." Ava tilted her head slightly. Not confused, just amused. "What's the problem, officer?" Reeves didn't answer. His eyes dropped to her briefcase like it might bite him. His lips twitched. "You match the description of a suspect involved in fraudulent government activity." Ava let the words hang for a moment, just enough to measure how ridiculous they sounded. Then she let out a low, humorless laugh. "Fraudulent government activity. Right. Let me guess. Black woman, wearing a suit, carrying folders. That's a red flag now?" Dalton's jaw ticked. He repeated his command, only colder. "Just cooperate, ma'am." There it was, that shift in tone, not a request, a warning. Ava glanced toward the courthouse doors. She was minutes away from presenting a report that could bring down half a department. Now she was being profiled on the steps. "I work here." Didn't matter. Dalton didn't blink, didn't ask for ID, didn't process the words, because black people explaining themselves to cops never changed the outcome. He reached for his cuffs. "Resisting will be considered obstruction," Reeves added. "Obstruction?" Ava's eyebrows arched slightly. That was cute. "And what exactly am I obstructing?" Dalton's patience cracked. The cuffs came out. Ava didn't resist. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She just raised her hands and let them do it, because she wasn't there to play their game. She was there to turn the entire board upside down. These two had no idea who they'd just put their hands on, and by the time they found out, it wouldn't be enough to save them. The steel of the cuffs bit cold against her wrists, not because the metal was tight, but because of what it meant. Ava Monroe didn't wince, didn't give them that. She stared ahead, silent, calculating, as the courthouse doors faded from view and the officers led her away, like a trophy they hadn't earned. The holding cell was exactly what she expected. Fluorescent lights buzzing above, a chipped metal bench, walls that smelled like sweat, bleach, and bad decisions. But Ava didn't lean back. She sat with her spine straight, legs crossed at the ankles, hands folded in her lap like she was in a conference room, waiting for a late client. She wasn't panicking. She was listening. Outside the cell, Sergeant Dalton and Officer Reeves were talking, their voices low, but not low enough. "She had the documents on her," Reeves muttered. Dalton exhaled through his nose, frustrated. "Then we say she tried to pass them off. Clearance files. Fakes." Ava's hands tightened, just slightly. So that was the angle. Not just a false arrest. They were setting her up. Manufacturing charges, forgery, impersonating a federal agent. She closed her eyes for a beat, let the weight of it settle. Not because she was scared, because she was tired. Tired of the same script, the same smug arrogance behind a badge, the recycled lies, the paperwork written in pencil so it could be erased when things got messy. She was tired of men like Dalton thinking they could throw handcuffs on the truth and expect it to sit quietly. "She's a nobody," Dalton said. "Judge will believe us. They always do." Nobody. That one settled in Ava's chest for a second. A long second. They had no idea. She let them keep talking. Let them write their own ending. Every word they said, every assumption they made was just another brick in the case she was already building. Then the sound came. Boom! The door to the holding area slammed open like thunder splitting a storm cloud. In walked Damon Cross, 6 feet 3 inches, dark charcoal suit, shoulders like a linebacker, a presence that didn't just fill a room, it bent it. He didn't walk. He entered. Didn't knock. Didn't announce. He wasn't here for pleasantries. Ava didn't smile, but she didn't need to. Damon headed straight for the sergeant's desk. No nod. No eye contact with the officers. "She's coming with me," Dalton scoffed. "She's facing serious federal charges." Damon didn't blink. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope, set it on the desk like a brick of dynamite with the fuse already lit. Dalton hesitated, then picked it up. "What's this?" Damon leaned forward, voice low but razor sharp. "Something from the Department of Justice." Dalton's lips tightened as he scanned the paperwork. Turns out Ms. Monroe isn't some civilian wandering into court. She's a federal consultant, special clearance, security auditing. And those documents, the ones you claim were fraudulent, they were for today's hearing. Reeves shifted. Dalton clenched his jaw. "That doesn't mean she didn't..." Damon lifted one finger. Just one. Reeves shut up. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was loud in the worst way. Ava finally stood from the bench. Calm, steady, deadly. "Oh, I didn't tell you. Must have slipped my mind. You know, what with the hole being cuffed before I got to open my mouth." Reeves looked down, couldn't meet her gaze. Dalton swallowed, still standing tall, clinging to the only thing he had left, his pride. "We were just doing our job." Ava tilted her head, her voice even, almost clinical. "Is that what you call it?" Dalton and Reeves didn't answer, because they were starting to feel it. That slow, creeping dread. The kind you can't shake. The realization that they hadn't arrested a suspect. They just walked headfirst into a trap, one built by someone smarter, quieter, and a hell of a lot more dangerous than they ever imagined. And the worst part? She hadn't even started yet. If this part hit different for you, show it some love. Like, comment your thoughts, maybe even share it with a friend. Damon Cross didn't just clear rooms, he realigned them. And by the time Ava stepped out of the holding cell, escorted by 2 silent officers, with heads slightly bowed, the shift in power was already in motion. They didn't speak. Not Dalton, not Reeves, not the 2 younger officers who had wandered in halfway through the scene and quickly figured out this wasn't a moment to ask questions. Because when a man walks in with Department of Justice credentials and a calm expression that says, "I've already won," you don't argue. You observe. The precinct's fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Damon led Ava through the hallway, his steps deliberate, controlled. The type of walk only attorneys at the top of their food chain ever mastered. Ava didn't need his help, but his presence? That was leverage. That was theater. That was strategy. In the lobby, Dalton was already on the phone. Sweating now, voice too loud, trying to explain the arrest to someone clearly more important than him. She didn't even show ID. She didn't say she was on assignment. His words bled desperation. He didn't know it yet, but the fall had already started. Ava paused beside him, didn't speak, didn't blink. Just looked at him the way a surgeon might study a tumor before removal. Then she walked on. Outside, the courthouse rose like it had hours earlier, gray, clean-cut, intimidating. Only now it felt different, because Ava wasn't walking toward it as a suspect. She was walking in as something else entirely. Inside the courtroom, the mood was clinical. High ceilings, flag draped behind the bench, spectators whispering in tight clusters, prosecutors reviewing their notes, still under the impression this was going to be another routine hearing. They hadn't heard yet, but they were about to. Damon moved fast. Within 10 minutes, he had Ava's charges dismissed. Not reduced, dismissed. With prejudice. Which meant they couldn't even bring them back later. The assistant district attorney tried to protest, mumbled something about protocols and national security risks. Damon barely turned his head, just handed over the second file, this one from a federal liaison confirming Ava Monroe's active consultant status on national clearance investigations. From that moment, the room belonged to her. No spotlight, no camera, but every pair of eyes slowly drifted in her direction. She didn't need a gavel. Her badge would be enough. Dalton and Reeves sat at the far end of the room, not in uniform now, but in dress shirts, hands fidgeting beneath the table. Their postures still clung to some hint of superiority, like they hadn't quite accepted they were defendants yet. That illusion wasn't going to last much longer. The judge called for a brief recess. Damon leaned in. "We're not done." Ava nodded once. She already knew. They exited the courtroom through a side hall, where Damon handed her the next set of papers. His voice dropped into low gear. "Internal Affairs has already been briefed. DOJ wants this handled quiet, which means you have leverage." Ava unfolded the document. Read every line like she was carving it into memory. It wasn't just about the wrongful arrest. It was bigger. This wasn't their first incident. Dalton had 3 prior complaints: excessive force, unlawful search, false reporting. Reeves had 2, racial profiling and improper detainment. Both cases had vanished quietly, buried under bureaucracy. Not this time. She looked up at Damon. "How far are they willing to go?" He exhaled through his nose. "Far enough. But they don't want noise. So if you want the long game, we play it methodically." Ava folded the paper back up, slid it into her blazer pocket. "Then let's play." They returned to the courtroom together. But this time, every camera turned. Every phone lifted. Word had gotten out. The woman they cuffed? Yeah. She was CIA cleared, and she was about to sit on the witness stand. The courtroom felt different now. Not louder, not more crowded, just heavier. The air held a certain weight. That kind of pressure you feel before something irreversible happens. Like a storm not yet visible, but too close to ignore. Ava Monroe stepped through the side entrance with Damon Cross at her side, and the shift was immediate. Conversations tapered off. The shuffle of papers slowed. Even Judge Whitaker, a woman with 30 years of trial experience and a face carved in practiced neutrality, looked up from the bench just a little too fast. Ava walked like gravity bent around her, not the other way. The silence wasn't commanded. It was earned, and everyone in the room knew it. Dalton and Reeves sat at the defendant's table, both now in cheap, off-the-rack suits that couldn't hide their discomfort. Dalton kept tapping his finger on the wood, a slow, anxious beat. Reeves stared at the table like if he focused hard enough, he might wake up from this. But it wasn't a dream. And the woman walking toward the witness stand? She was their nightmare. Ava's heels echoed against the polished marble floor. Click, click, click. A rhythm that matched the slow collapse of 2 men who'd spent their lives hiding behind a badge and now had nothing left but courtroom etiquette and a flimsy defense. She didn't look at them. Didn't need to. She reached the stand, placed her briefcase on the floor beside her, adjusted her blazer, and sat down with the kind of poise that reminded everyone she wasn't here to plead. She was here to present. The judge leaned forward slightly. Ms. Monroe, I understand you have a statement to make before this court. Ava nodded, one slow breath in, then she reached into her blazer. Reeves flinched. Dalton stiffened. And then, calmly, deliberately, Ava placed her federal clearance badge on the desk in front of her. The room cracked, not physically, but audibly. A collective gasp rippled through the space. Phones slipped from hands. Spectators leaned forward. Someone in the second row cursed under their breath. Ava didn't flinch. She didn't smile either. She just looked at Judge Whitaker. Your Honor, I was detained without cause. Officers Dalton and Reeves knowingly ignored my identification, obstructed a federal investigation, and attempted to fabricate evidence to cover their misconduct. The words weren't dramatic. They didn't need to be. They were surgical. Ava's eyes finally turned to the defense table. But here's the best part. She leaned forward slightly, just enough for her voice to cut through the room like a scalpel. I was already investigating them. Dalton blinked, slow, like his brain hadn't caught up yet. Reeves opened his mouth, then shut it again. Chaos followed. Prosecutors shuffled papers, whispering furiously. Reporters scrambled to update copy for their outlets. Phones vibrated with new alerts. The courtroom buzzed not with noise, but with realization. This wasn't just a false arrest. It was exposure. Judge Whitaker raised a hand to quiet the room, then turned back to Ava. Continue. Ava did. She detailed each step, the assignment she'd been given, the red flags surrounding the precinct's internal affairs history, the patterns of misconduct that matched complaints from previous arrests. She laid out names, dates, timelines. Evidence. She didn't speculate. She documented. Dalton's face turned a slow, chalky gray. Reeves stared at the floor. They had come into court expecting to justify a mistake. Instead, they were watching their careers disintegrate under the weight of someone they thought they'd outmaneuver. They hadn't just arrested a federal investigator. They had walked into her active case, and they'd handed her everything she needed. Ava leaned back, her testimony complete. No drama, no victory speech. Because for her, this wasn't revenge, it was procedure. Judge Whitaker called for a recess. Spectators rushed into the hallway. Reporters scrambled to file live updates. The headline was writing itself. Local officers arrested federal agent mid-assignment, now under DOJ investigation. Dalton didn't get up right away. His knuckles were white against the table edge. Reeves finally leaned in, whispered something, panicked. Ava stood, adjusted her cuffs, then turned. She didn't look back. Never did. The courtroom doors hadn't even closed behind her before the fallout began. Dalton was the first to crack. He shifted in his seat, rolled his shoulders, then rolled them again, as if trying to shake something off. But it wasn't tension, it was fear. Not the loud, flailing kind, but the cold, creeping type. The one that starts in the gut and works its way up the spine. Reeves wasn't doing much better. His hands trembled just slightly, fingers tapping against the polished table surface in a pattern that didn't match any rhythm. Just static, nervous static. They were supposed to be the ones giving testimony, the ones asking questions, demanding answers. Instead, they sat like men waiting for sentencing. Only nobody had said the verdict out loud yet. Everyone else in the room could already feel it. And then Ava returned. She came in alone this time. No Damon Cross beside her. No files in hand. No dramatic music playing. Just her. In that same black suit, same composed expression, same unbothered stride. But something had changed. Everyone saw it. She didn't walk like she was here to defend herself anymore. She walked like she was here to deliver the conclusion. Every eye followed her. Not just because of what she'd done, but because of what she represented now. Not just a woman with credentials, not just an agent with a badge. She was the consequence. Ava sat back down at the witness stand. She didn't adjust her posture or her blazer. No need to. The room was already hanging on her next move. Judge Whitaker raised an eyebrow. Do you have anything further to add, Ms. Monroe? Ava nodded once, then looked straight at the defense table. She didn't speak to the judge this time. She spoke to them. You didn't just obstruct an investigation. She paused, just long enough for the tension to coil again. You obstructed a federal operation targeting your own department. I was embedded here under direct orders, monitoring multiple officers tied to falsified arrest records and unlawful surveillance of community leaders. Her tone never wavered, but every word landed like a hammer. You tried to turn me into the problem when I was the solution you never saw coming. Dalton's hand twitched, his jaw clenched. Reeves didn't move. Ava reached down, lifted a thin folder from her bag and passed it to the court clerk. Inside were surveillance transcripts, phone logs, body cam redactions, all traced back to one station, one network of officers, one culture of corruption. Judge Whitaker skimmed the top page. Her face didn't react, but her pause said everything. "We'll be entering this into evidence," she said flatly, "effective immediately." Dalton opened his mouth, maybe to object, maybe to deny, but no sound came out. Because what defense could possibly fit here? What excuse? They hadn't just arrested the wrong woman. They had arrested the woman already watching them, the one with clearance, reach, and a mission she'd never needed to explain. The courtroom buzzed again, but not with gasps this time, with the slow hum of realization, a dozen moving pieces suddenly snapping into place. Ava stood up. No big declaration, no parting shot, just the quiet precision of someone who came to do a job and finished it. As she turned to leave, Reeves finally looked up. His face was pale, eyes wide, like he'd just seen his own future evaporate into smoke. Dalton was still staring straight ahead, lips pressed into a tight, colorless line. Ava paused at the door, not to look back, but to speak one final time. "You didn't just mess with the wrong person, you played the wrong game." Then she walked out. No rush, no hesitation. Just the sharp, echoing click of her heels on the tile. Each step a nail in the coffin of two men who had finally run out of power. Outside, the sky was the same gray it had been that morning. Nothing dramatic, no thunder, no storm rolling in like some movie ending. Just a quiet afternoon in downtown Atlanta. A courthouse with high steps, and a woman walking down them like she had somewhere more important to be. Ava Monroe didn't smile. She didn't wave to the cameras or pause for the reporters now clustered behind the barricades. Microphones stretched toward her like vines, voices firing questions she didn't bother to hear. "Ms. Monroe, was the arrest racial profiling? Is this connected to the corruption case? Are you pressing charges?" She kept walking, because this was never about the headlines. It wasn't about putting on a show. The truth didn't need lights. It just needed a platform. And now it had one. Damon Cross waited beside the car, door already open, suit jacket draped neatly over his arm. He didn't say anything either, just gave a nod, the kind that meant, "It's done." Ava slipped into the passenger seat, exhaling quietly. Not relief, not pride, just clarity. She had done what needed to be done. Across the city, the ripple was already starting. Internal affairs would move by morning. Files were being unsealed, witnesses contacted, oversight committees pinged. Ava's report, over 70 pages long, was in the hands of people who couldn't ignore it anymore. Dalton and Reeves would never wear a badge again. They'd lose more than their jobs. They'd lose the illusion of invincibility. And that mattered more than any apology they'd never say out loud. Back inside the courthouse, Judge Whitaker was reviewing the final orders. Prosecutors were revising their docket. Reporters were rewriting stories in real time. But Ava, she was already moving forward. She'd seen this pattern before. Bad actors hiding behind good uniforms. Power twisted into control. Systems that failed to protect the very people they were built to serve. But she also knew something else. You can't fight corruption with chaos. You fight it with precision. You fight it by knowing more, preparing better. And when the moment comes, by being colder than the room they tried to bury you in. Ava looked out the window as the city passed by. Her phone buzzed once. New assignment, new city, same story. She silenced it and leaned her head back. She wasn't chasing revenge. Revenge is messy, emotional. It leaves you empty once the fire burns out. What Ava delivered wasn't vengeance. It was structure. It was accountability. It was justice. And justice? Justice has no ego. Justice doesn't celebrate. It just moves forward.